Good day, everyone. So for today's lesson, we're going to discuss about the properties of real numbers. So for today's learning target, at the end of the video, I know you can enumerate the different properties of real numbers and you can define the opposite and the absolute value. So let us have our lesson for today. So it is said that in performing fundamental operations on real numbers, a set of mathematical laws called properties of real numbers is needed. So we have here the different properties of real number. Let's start with the closure property. So under the closure property, we have the closure property of addition. So it is stated that if x and y are real numbers, then the sum is also a real number. So we have z is equals to x plus y. Another, we have the closure property of multiplication, wherein it is stated that if x and y are real numbers, then the product is also a real number, wherein we have z is equals to x times y. Enclosure property, wherein it gives the assurance that the sum or the product of any two real numbers is also a real number. Second property is the commutative property. Under the commutative property, we have the commutative property of addition, wherein it is stated that if x and y are real numbers, then x plus y is equals to y plus x. Another, we have the commutative property of multiplication. It is stated that if x and y are real numbers, then xy is equals to yx. So when we say commutative properties, it states that the order of the addends or factors does not change the sum or the product respectively. Next property is the associative property. So we have the associative property of addition that stated that if x, y, and z are real numbers, then quantity x plus y plus z is equals to x plus the quantity of y plus z. Another, we have the associative property of multiplication, wherein if x, y, and z are real numbers, then quantity xy times z is equals to x times quantity of y times z. So when we say associative property, so it states that the grouping of addends or factors does not change the sum or the product respectively. Okay, so let us have the next property, the distributive property. So we have the distributive property of multiplication over addition that states that if x, y, and z are real numbers, then x times the quantity of y plus z is equals to xy plus xz, and quantity of x plus y times z is equals to xz plus yz. So meaning to say, we need to distribute one real number to the other's real numbers. The next is the identity property. So we have the identity property of addition. If x is a real number, then x plus 0 is equals to 0 plus x is equals to x. Then identity property of multiplication. If x is a real number, then x times 1 is equals to 1 times x is equals to x. It is stated that 0 is the additive identity element and 1 is the multiplicative identity element. This implies that the sum or product of any real number and 0 or 1 respectively will result to a real number. So meaning, any number added to 0, the answer is the number itself. And any number multiplied to 1, the answer is also the number itself. Next is the inverse property. So we have the inverse property of addition. If x is a real number, then there exists another real number or negative x such that we have x plus negative x is equals to 0. And then in inverse property of multiplication, we have if x is a real number and remember that x is not equals to 0, then there exists another real number 1 over x such that x times 1 over x is equals to 1. So it is said that if the sum of two real numbers is 0, then the real numbers are said to be additive inverses or the opposites. Then if the product of two non-zero real numbers is 1, then the real number is the multiplicative inverses or the reciprocal. And the last property is the zero property. So we have the zero property of multiplication. If x is a real number, then x times 0 is equals to 0 times x is equals to 0. So, class, these are the different properties of real numbers. Okay, class, so let us have some examples about the properties of real numbers. So, let us identify the property being illustrated in each mathematical sentence. For example, your given is 51 plus 27 is equals to 27 plus 51. By looking at our given, you will notice that the property is commutative property of addition. Next, we have 74 plus negative 74 is equals to 0. So in this case, you will notice that there is a negative and there is a positive wherein we apply the opposites. So if we apply the oppositeness, so therefore we have the inverse property of addition. Next, we have 3 plus the quantity of 57 plus 9 is equals to the quantity of 3 plus 57 plus 9. So we have the associative property of addition. Next, we have 8 over 9 times 9 over 9 is equals to 8 over 9. So the property being illustrated is identity property of multiplication. Okay, class, so after discussing about the properties of real numbers, so we now have the opposites. So when we say opposites, it is the same distance away from 0, but on different sides of the number line. So meaning to say, so the opposite of a positive number is a negative number, and the opposite of a negative number or real number is a positive real number. So for example, we're going to find the opposite of the following numbers. So you have 4. So the same distance away from 0 but on different sides of the number line is negative 4. Then 0. So of course 0 is 0. And then negative 100. So the opposite of negative 100 is positive 100. And then absolute value of positive 9. So we have negative 9. Okay, class. So now let us have the absolute value. So when we say absolute value, it is the distance from 0 to the number line. So for example, we're going to find the absolute value of the following numbers. So the absolute value of 5. So we're talking about the distance of the 5 from 0 to the number line. So we all know that the distance of 5 from the number line is 5. So therefore, the absolute value of 5 is positive 5. And then, another example, absolute value of negative 5. So again, distance from 0 to the number line is 5. So the absolute value of negative 5 is past 5. Then, we have the absolute value of negative 100 is 100. Absolute value of 0 is 0. Okay, class, so let us have some activity about our lesson about the absolute value and opposite. So let us give the opposites of each number. What is the opposite of negative 10? So of course we have positive 10 because we all know that the opposite of every negative number is a positive number. How about the absolute value of 20 plus 16? What is the opposite of our given number? So the first thing that you are going to do is you are going to add 20 and 16. So you have 36. Then, of course, the absolute value of 36 is 36. And the opposite of positive 36 is negative 36. Last, we have negative absolute value of 56. So you have positive 56. Okay, class, so that would be all for today, discussing about the properties of real numbers, the absolute values, and the opposites. I hope you learned a lot. So thank you for listening. Always keep smiling and Laos Day.